The great chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from dozens of species filled the curved seats that rose in circles around the central speaking platform. The air itself seemed to hum with the translation devices that allowed everyone to understand each other. Ambassador Thais Ka stood in the center of the chamber. Her forearms trembled as she held the small device that contained the last message from her homeworld. The Zelani diplomat was tall and graceful, with skin that looked like it was made of blue crystal. Silver tears ran down her face as she looked up at the hundreds of beings watching her. "Honored council members," she began, her voice shaking. "I come before you today to beg for help. My people are dying." The chamber fell quiet. Even the soft humming of the translation devices seemed to grow softer. Thiska pressed a button on her device and a hologram appeared above her head. The image showed a beautiful city made of crystal towers that reached toward the sky like frozen music. Gardens filled with strange plants grew between the buildings. Children with the same blue crystal skin as Thiska played in parks while their parents watched with loving eyes. "This was Zelani Prime 3 days ago," Thiska said. "Our greatest city. Home to 12 million of my people." The image changed. Now the crystal towers were broken and burning. Dark ships hung in the sky like angry clouds. Creatures that looked like giant insects with too many arms and legs moved through the streets. The beautiful gardens were trampled and dead. "This is Zelani Prime now," Thaiska whispered. The hologram showed Krek soldiers dragging Zelani families from their homes. The Kreks were nightmare creatures with hard shells and sharp claws. They moved like spiders but stood tall like people. Their eyes were black and showed no mercy. "The Krek's dominion has taken 17 of our worlds in the past 2 months," Thiska continued. "They kill our defenders and take everyone else as slaves. They strip our planets of everything valuable and leave nothing but dead rock behind." She pressed the button again. This time the hologram showed Zelani children singing a soft lullaby while hiding in a basement. Their voices were sweet and sad. Then the ceiling above them exploded and Krek soldiers poured through the hole. "This was the last transmission from our capital city," Thiska said. Her voice broke as she spoke. "Those children, they were singing the song their mothers taught them, the song that was supposed to keep them safe from monsters." The chamber was completely silent now. Some of the council members looked away from the terrible images. Others stared with shock and horror. "The Kreks have 3 million ships," Thiska said. "They have weapons that can crack planets. They have soldiers bred for nothing but war and killing. In 6 more months, every Zelani in the galaxy will be dead or chained." She fell to her knees in the center of the chamber. It was not something a proud ambassador should do, but pride meant nothing when her entire species was about to disappear forever. "Please," she begged. "I know we have little to offer in return. We are mathematicians and artists, not warriors. But surely the life of 13 billion innocent people means something to this council." For a long moment nobody spoke. Then Admiral Zephyr of the Aquarian Federation rose from his seat. The Aquarians looked like people made of living water, and Zephyr's form rippled as he moved. "Ambassador Thais Ka," he said in a voice like waves on a beach, "your suffering moves us all. But the Krek's dominion has over 40,000 worlds. Their military is the strongest in the galaxy. To fight them would mean the death of millions of our own people." More council members began to speak. The Silicon Collective, beings made of living metal and circuits, calculated that military action had only a 12% chance of success. The Ethereal Communion, creatures of pure energy, offered to pray for the Zelani, but said their people were not built for physical war. One by one, every major power in the galaxy found reasons why they could not help. The costs were too high. The risks were too great. The Kreks were too strong. Thiska listened to each excuse with growing despair. She had known this might happen, but she had hoped that someone somewhere would care enough to try. As the last speaker sat down, she felt the weight of her failure crushing down on her. She would have to return to her people and tell them that they would die alone. "If I may speak," a new voice said. Everyone turned to look. In the back of the chamber, a young AI representative named Vex-29 had raised one of his metal arms. The AI looked like a person made of silver with glowing blue eyes. He was new to the council and had never spoken during a session before. "You have something to add, junior counselor?" asked the council speaker, an ancient being whose species had been forgotten long ago. "Yes, honored speaker," Vex-29 said. His voice was nervous but determined. There is one species we have not asked for help. Oh? The speaker leaned forward with interest. And who might that be? They are new to galactic society, Vex-29 explained. They come from Sector 7G, from a planet our scouts labeled as a Class 12 death world. They call themselves humans. The chamber erupted into shocked noises. The Aquarians gurgled in dismay. The Silicon Collective sparked with electrical discharges of surprise. The ethereal communion flickered like candle flames in a strong wind. A Class 12 death world? Admiral Zephyr sounded horrified. Junior Counselor, surely you know that nothing but savage beasts come from worlds that dangerous. The gravity alone would crush most of us. The weather patterns would kill us in minutes. The native life forms. He shuddered, his watery form rippling with fear. I have read their files, Vex-29 said quietly. They are strange, yes. They evolved on a world where everything wanted to kill them. But they have technology. They have joined galactic society. And he paused as if unsure whether to continue. And what? The speaker asked. And their military records show they have never lost a war, Vex-29 finished. The chamber fell silent again. This was impossible. Every species in the galaxy had lost wars. It was part of growing up as a civilization. You fought, you lost, you learned, and you became wiser. That cannot be accurate, Admiral Zephyr protested. No species wins every conflict. According to their own records, they have fought hundreds of wars against each other over thousands of years, Vex-29 replied. They always found ways to win, even when they were outnumbered or had inferior weapons. They are very creative in their approach to warfare. Thaiska looked up from where she knelt on the floor. Hope flickered in her crystal eyes like a small flame. Where are these humans now? She asked. They maintain a small diplomatic mission at Station Kepler in the Outer Rim, Vex-29 answered. They have been trying to establish trade relationships with various species. And you think they would help us? Thaiska struggled to her feet. Even though they barely know us? I do not know, Vex-29 admitted. But they are our only option left. The speaker looked around the chamber at all the other council members. Does anyone else have objections to asking these humans for assistance? Admiral Zephyr spoke up again. This is madness. Deathworlders are not civilized beings. They will probably try to conquer the Zelani themselves after they finish with the Krex. Then what do you suggest, Admiral? Thaiska asked. Her voice was no longer pleading. Now it carried the cold edge of someone who had nothing left to lose. Should we simply wait for the Krex to finish killing us? At least if these humans conquer us, some of my people might survive as slaves. That is better than extinction. The Admiral had no answer for that. Very well, the speaker decided. Ambassador Thaiska, you have permission to contact these humans and request their assistance. The Council will provide you with transportation to their diplomatic station. Thaiska bowed deeply to the speaker and then to young Vex-29. Thank you, she whispered. Both of you. As she left the chamber to prepare for her journey, Thaiska felt something she had not felt in months, hope. It was a tiny flame and it might be snuffed out when she met these mysterious humans, but for now, it was enough. Behind her, the council members began to argue among themselves about the wisdom of involving Deathworlders in galactic affairs. But their arguments did not matter anymore. Soon, the galaxy would meet humanity, and nothing would ever be the same again. The human ship looked different from anything else docked at Station Kepler. Where other vessels were smooth and elegant, the human craft called New Horizon was built like a weapon. Its hull was dark gray metal covered with scars from asteroid impacts and laser burns. Most species would have repaired such damage immediately, but the humans seemed to wear their scars like medals. Ambassador Thaiska watched through the station's viewing port as the human ship slowly turned to dock. The way it moved reminded her of a hunting beast stalking its prey. Every motion was controlled and purposeful, with no wasted energy. Are you certain about this? Asked Captain Morvek, the station commander. He was a Trilarian, a species that looked like tall blue people with 3 eyes. All 3 of his eyes were fixed on the human ship with obvious worry. I have no choice, Thaiska replied. Every day we delay, more of my people die. The docking clamps engaged with a sound like thunder. A few minutes later, the airlock doors opened and the humans stepped onto the station. Thaiska had studied the files about human anatomy, but seeing them in person was different. They were shorter than most galactic species, but built like they were made of solid muscle and determination. Their eyes faced forward like predators, and they moved with a fluid grace that reminded her of hunting cats from her home world. The leader was a female named Sarah Chen. Her hair was turning gray at the temples, and her dark eyes held the look of someone who had seen many battles. She wore a simple blue uniform with various symbols that Thiska assumed were military decorations. "Ambassador Thiska," Chen said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "I'm honored to meet you. I've heard about your people's situation." Thiska carefully shook the human's hand. Chen's grip was firm but not crushing, despite the fact that human bones were much denser than Zelani crystal bones. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," Thiska said. "I know you must be busy establishing trade relationships." "Trade can wait," Chen replied. "Let's talk about what's happening to your people." They moved to a conference room on the station. Chen brought 3 other humans with her. A man with scars on his face who was introduced as Colonel Martinez, a young woman with bright green eyes named Dr. Foster, and an older man called Admiral Harrison who moved like a coiled spring ready to explode into action. Thiska activated her holographic projector and showed them the same images she had shown the Galactic Council. The humans watched in complete silence as the footage played. When it reached the part with the children singing their lullaby, she saw Chen's jaw muscles tighten. "How many Krek ships are in your system right now?" Colonel Martinez asked. His voice was calm, but there was something dangerous underneath it. "Our last count was 47,000 vessels of various sizes," Thiska answered. "They have 3 main battle groups surrounding our remaining worlds." "What kind of weapons do they have?" Dr. Foster wanted to know. "Plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, and something they call a planet cracker that can split a world in half," Thiska said. "Their individual soldiers carry weapons that can melt through our strongest crystal armor." Admiral Harrison leaned back in his chair. "And the Galactic Council said no to helping you?" "They said the risks were too great," Thiska explained. "The Krek's military is the strongest force in the galaxy. Everyone is afraid of them." The humans exchanged glances. There was something in their expressions that Thiska could not read, but it made her feel both hopeful and slightly frightened. "Ambassador," Chen said slowly, "I need to ask you something important. If we agree to help your people, we'll do it our way. Human military doctrine is very different from what the galaxy is used to. Some of our methods might seem extreme." "What do you mean?" Thiska asked. Colonel Martinez answered. "We don't fight wars the way other species do. We don't line up our ships and trade shots until someone surrenders. We hit fast, hit hard, and we don't stop until the enemy can't fight anymore. But we also protect civilians," Dr. Foster added quickly. "Human military law is very strict about protecting innocent people. Anyone who breaks those laws faces severe punishment." "I don't understand," Thiska said. "You're saying you're more violent than other species, but also more protective." "That's exactly what we're saying," Admiral Harrison replied. "Humans learned to fight on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We got very good at violence, but we also learned that protecting the people we care about is worth any sacrifice." Chen leaned forward across the table. "Let me be clear about what you're asking us to do. You want us to fight an empire that outnumbers us 1,000 to 1. You want us to take on the most feared military force in the galaxy. You want us to risk human lives for people we've never met." Thiska felt her hope beginning to fade. The humans were going to say no, just like everyone else. She started to stand up, preparing to thank them for their time and leave. "When do we start?" Chen asked. Thiska froze halfway out of her chair. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "I asked when we start," Chen repeated. "How long do your people have before the Kreks finish their conquest?" You're saying yes?" Thiska could barely believe what she was hearing. "You'll help us?" "Ambassador," Colonel Martinez said, "my species spent 10,000 years learning how to kill everything on our planet before it could kill us. We're very good at impossible odds, but why?" Thiska asked. "You barely know us. We have nothing to offer you in return. Why would you risk your lives for strangers?" The humans looked at each other again. This time Thiska could read their expressions clearly. There was sadness there and anger, and a deep determination that seemed to burn like an inner fire. "Because it's the right thing to do," Dr. Foster said simply. Admiral Harrison stood up and began pacing around the room. "We've seen the footage of what the Kreks are doing to your people. Children hiding in basements while monsters hunt them, families torn apart and sold into slavery, entire civilizations wiped out for profit." He stopped pacing and looked directly at Thiska. Where we come from. There's a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We won't do nothing. The Galactic Council is right about one thing, Chen added. This will be dangerous. We'll probably lose ships and people, but that's the price of standing up to bullies. Thiska felt the silver tears starting to flow down her face again, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. How many ships can you send? We have a small fleet stationed at Earth, Admiral Harrison said. 37 vessels of various classes. It's not much compared to the Krex Armada, but we'll make it count. 37 ships against 47,000? Thiska was horrified. That's suicide. Colonel Martinez smiled, and there was something predatory about the expression. Ambassador, you're thinking like the rest of the galaxy. Big fleets, massive battles, trading shots until someone gives up. That's not how humans fight. Then how do you fight? She asked. Smart, Chen said. Fast and very, very dirty. Dr. Foster pulled out a small tablet and showed Thiska a series of tactical diagrams. Human military doctrine is based on something we call asymmetric warfare. We don't try to match the enemy's strength. We find their weaknesses and exploit them. The Krex think they're unbeatable because they have the biggest fleet and the strongest weapons, Admiral Harrison explained. They've never faced an enemy that refuses to play by their rules. What do you need from us? Thiska asked. Intelligence, Chen replied immediately. Everything you know about Krex ship designs, their tactics, their supply lines, their command structure. The more we know about how they think, the better we can predict what they'll do. And we'll need your help with evacuation procedures, Dr. Foster added. Our primary goal is saving as many of your people as possible. We need to know the best ways to get civilians off your worlds quickly and safely. Thiska nodded eagerly. I can provide all of that. My government will give you whatever information you need. Good, Chen said, standing up. We'll need 3 days to organize our fleet and plan our approach. Can your people hold out that long? We'll have to, Thiska replied. We don't have any other choice. As the meeting ended, Colonel Martinez put his hand on Thiska's shoulder. Ambassador, I want you to understand something. When humans go to war, we don't just fight to win. We fight to end the war completely. By the time we're done, the Krex won't just be defeated. They'll never want to threaten innocent people again. Is that a promise? Thiska asked. That's a guarantee, Chen said. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you threaten someone under human protection. As Thiska prepared to return to her ship and contact her government, she felt something she had not experienced since the Krex attacks began. Hope. Not just the tiny flame she had carried from the council chambers, but a blazing fire that burned away her fear and despair. The humans were coming, and somehow that changed everything. The human fleet arrived in Zelani space like a pack of hunting wolves. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his destroyer Hellhound, watching the tactical display with cold eyes. 37 human ships faced 47,000 Krex vessels spread across 3 star systems. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the Krex have formed a standard siege formation around the remaining Zelani worlds. They're using civilian populations as shields while they strip mine the planets. Rodriguez studied the enemy positions. The Krex had done this many times before. Their massive ships surrounded each planet like a metal shell, making it impossible for any rescue force to attack without hitting their own people. It was textbook galactic warfare, the kind of strategy that had worked for them on dozens of other worlds. Any word from the other species? Rodriguez asked. Are they monitoring the situation? Yes, sir, his communications officer replied. The Galactic Council has sent observer ships to watch what happens. They're keeping their distance, but they're definitely paying attention. Rodriguez nodded. Good. Let them watch. Let them see what humans could do when they stop playing by everyone else's rules. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Execute Plan Wolfpack. Remember, people, our job is to save lives first and kill Krex second. Anyone who puts glory before protecting civilians will answer to me personally. The human ships scattered like leaves in a storm. To the watching Krex and galactic observers, it looked like the tiny human fleet was falling apart before the battle even began. The Krex commanders laughed among themselves, discussing how quickly they would crush these foolish Deathworlders. They stopped laughing when the real attack began. High above Zelani Prime, Lieutenant Sarah Kim floated in the vacuum of space wearing nothing but a powered armor suit and a grim smile. She and her squad had launched themselves from their ship 3 hours ago, using the planet's gravity well to slingshot around to the dark side of the Krex fleet. Target acquired, she whispered into her comm unit. Below her, a massive Krex command ship hung in space like a metal city. Its shields were down because the commanders inside never imagined that enemies would be crazy enough to attack by dropping through space in person. Remember, came the voice of her squad leader, we're not here to destroy the ship. We're here to cause chaos and give the fleet an opening. Sarah and her 11 squad mates activated their suit thrusters and dove toward the Krex ship like falling meteors. They hit the hull at speeds that would have killed any other species. But human bones were built to handle the crushing gravity of Earth, and their armor was designed for impossible situations. The Krex ship's sensors detected the impacts, but the crew dismissed them as random debris. They had no idea that 12 human soldiers had just punched through their outer hull and were now making their way toward the bridge. Meanwhile, on the surface of Zelani Prime, the situation was desperate. Krex soldiers herded terrified Zelani families into loading bays, preparing to ship them off-world as slaves. The crystal cities that had taken centuries to build were being torn apart by massive mining machines. That's when the rescue ships arrived. Captain Elena Vasquez brought her assault cruiser, Retribution screaming through the atmosphere at speeds that should have torn the ship apart. Behind her, 6 more human vessels followed the same impossible flight path, their hulls glowing red-hot from atmospheric friction. "Sir," her pilot called out, "the Krex are threatening to execute hostages if we land." "Let them try," Vasquez replied, checking her rifle. "Target the Krex heavy weapons first. Leave the infantry to the ground teams." The human ships didn't slow down as they approached the surface. Instead, they opened their cargo bays while still moving at hundreds of miles per hour. Dozens of human soldiers jumped out, their armor systems calculating precise landing points in the middle of the Krex formations. The Krex had never seen anything like it. Humans fell from the sky like avenging angels, landing among them with weapons already firing. Sergeant James O'Connor hit the ground rolling, came up with his plasma rifle spitting death, and had killed 3 Krex soldiers before they even realized they were under attack. "Protect the civilians," he shouted to his squad. "Make every shot count." The battle for the planet's surface was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human soldiers fought with a coordination that seemed impossible, as if they could read each other's minds. When one Marine ran out of ammunition, another would immediately provide cover fire. When a Krex soldier threatened captured Zelani, a human sniper would put a bullet through its head from half a mile away. But the most shocking thing to the galactic observers was how the humans treated the defeated Krex. When Krex soldiers surrendered, the humans didn't execute them. They disarmed them, gave them medical treatment if needed, and secured them as prisoners of war. "This is impossible," Admiral Zephyr muttered from his observation ship. "No species shows mercy to enemies who were about to commit genocide." Back in space, the human fleet was demonstrating their own brand of impossible warfare. The Krex had expected a traditional battle, with ships lined up trading fire until one side retreated. Instead, human vessels darted between the much larger Krex ships like fighter craft, using their superior speed and maneuverability to strike at critical systems and vanish before return fire could find them. Commander Lisa Park, captain of the stealth ship Shadow, had taken her vessel directly into the middle of the Krex formation. Her ship was painted with a special coating that absorbed sensor signals, making it nearly invisible to enemy detection systems. "Target the supply ships," she ordered her weapons officer. "Every shot needs to count." Shadow fired once, destroying a Krex ammunition transport in a ball of fire. Before the enemy could figure out where the shot had come from, the human ship had already moved to a new position and fired again. On the Krex command ship, Warlord Thekmore stared at his tactical displays in growing confusion and anger. His fleet outnumbered the humans more than 1,000 to 1, but somehow the battle was not going according to plan. "Report," he snarled at his tactical officer. "Sir, we've lost 16 ships and the humans have lost..." "None," the officer replied, his voice shaking. "They're not fighting like any species we've encountered before. They refuse to engage us directly and they seem to be everywhere at once." "Impossible." Thekmore slammed his clawed fist down on his command console. "Order all ships to focus fire on the human vessels. I don't care about collateral damage." But as soon as the Krex fleet began to reposition for a coordinated attack, the humans changed tactics again. Instead of running, they suddenly turned and charged directly at the largest Krex ships. Captain Rodriguez felt his destroyer shudder as Krex plasma bolts struck its armor. "All power to forward shields," he ordered. "Take us straight at their flagship." "Sir, that's suicide," his pilot protested. "No," Rodriguez replied with a savage grin. "That's human." The Hellhound accelerated toward the massive Krex dreadnought like a bullet aimed at a giant's heart. At the last possible second, Rodriguez ordered his ship to dive beneath the enemy vessel and fire all weapons directly into its unarmored belly. The Krex dreadnought's reactor exploded in a chain reaction that lit up half the star system. The blast took out 6 more Krex ships and sent the rest of their fleet into panic. "This is Admiral Harrison to all human ships," came the voice over the communications channel. "Phase 1 is complete. Begin evacuation operations." Across the 3 star systems, human ships descended toward the embattled Zelani worlds. But instead of bringing more weapons, they carried medical supplies, food, and empty cargo holds ready to transport refugees to safety. Dr. Amanda Foster stood in the medical bay of her hospital ship as the first Zelani refugees were brought aboard. Many of them were injured and all of them were terrified, but as her human medical team began treating their wounds with gentle efficiency, the fear in their crystal eyes slowly gave way to wonder. "Why are you helping us?" asked a young Zelani girl whose arm had been broken by Krex soldiers. Dr. Foster smiled as she carefully set the child's bone. "Because you needed help, sweetheart. That's what people do for each other." On the observation deck of his ship, Admiral Zephyr watched the human rescue operations with amazement. These Deathworlders had just fought one of the most brutal battles in galactic history, and now they were risking their lives again to save wounded civilians. "I don't understand them," he said to his aide. "They fight like demons, but they treat prisoners and refugees with more kindness than most species show their own people." High above Zelani Prime, Lieutenant Sarah Kim and her squad had completed their mission aboard the Krex command ship. They had destroyed the enemy's communication systems and planted explosives in key locations. But they had also done something unexpected. As they prepared to escape, they encountered a group of young Krex who had been forced into military service against their will. Instead of killing them, Sarah's team disabled their weapons and left them with emergency supplies and instructions on how to surrender to human forces. "Why?" asked one of the young Krex soldiers. "We would have killed you without hesitation." Sarah looked at the alien through her helmet's visor. "Because you're not our enemy," she said simply. "Your leaders are. There's a difference." As the human fleet regrouped after their stunning victory, the galaxy watched in shocked silence. Unless Dr. Kalara Nix had studied alien psychology for over 200 years, but nothing had prepared her for interviewing human soldiers. The vegan scientist sat across from Sergeant James O'Connor in the medical bay of the human hospital ship Mercy, trying to understand how these strange Deathworlders could be so violent and so compassionate at the same time. O'Connor was a typical human male in his 30s, with short brown hair and scars on his hands that spoke of many battles. But what struck Dr. Nix most was his eyes. They were alert and dangerous, like a predator ready to fight, but also warm and kind when he looked at the pictures of his 2 young daughters that he kept on the table between them. "Sergeant," Dr. Nix began, "I've reviewed your service record. You've been in combat for 15 years and have killed over 300 enemy soldiers. Yet yesterday my observers saw you spending 4 hours helping Zelani children find their parents. Can you explain this contradiction?" O'Connor smiled and picked up one of the pictures. It showed 2 human girls with bright smiles, probably 6 and 8 years old. "There's no contradiction, Doctor. I fight because I want my daughters to grow up in a galaxy where they don't have to be afraid of monsters." "But you must enjoy the violence," Dr. Nix pressed. "Your species evolved on a death world. Surely combat comes naturally to you." The human's expression grew serious. "Doctor, let me tell you something about humans. We didn't survive on Earth because we loved fighting. We survived because we were smart enough to know when we had to fight, and tough enough to do whatever it took to protect our families." He gestured toward the medical bay around them, where human doctors were treating wounded Zelani civilians alongside captured Krex soldiers. "Look around you. Do you see soldiers who enjoy violence? Or do you see people who understand that sometimes violence is the only way to stop greater violence?" Dr. Nix made notes on her tablet as O'Connor continued. "Every human child learns the same lesson growing up," he said. The strongest person in the room isn't the one who can hurt the most people. It's the one who can protect the most people. We fight because we have to, not because we want to. Across the ship, Admiral Sarah Chen was having her own conversation with representatives from the Galactic Council. The Council members had arrived on observer ships to witness the aftermath of the human victory, and their reactions ranged from amazement to fear. "Admiral Chen," said Ambassador Vex 29, the young AI who had first suggested asking humans for help, "your tactics were unlike anything in our military databases. How did you know they would work?" Chen stood at the observation window, looking out at the fleet of human ships protecting the Zelani refugee convoys. "Because we've been fighting wars for thousands of years, Counselor. Not just against other humans, but against everything on our planet that wanted us dead." "But surely your world cannot be as dangerous as the reports suggest," protested Admiral Zephyr of the Aquarian Federation. "Class 12 Deathworlds are theoretical constructs. Nothing intelligent could actually evolve there." Dr. Amanda Foster, who had joined the meeting after completing surgery on 17 wounded refugees, pulled up a holographic display of Earth. "Admiral, let me show you what my colleagues and I call home." The image showed a blue and green world that looked peaceful from space. But as the display zoomed in, the galactic representatives began to understand why humans were different. 90% of Earth's landmass experiences regular earthquakes, Dr. Foster explained. The weather patterns include hurricanes with winds over 200 miles per hour, tornadoes that can destroy entire cities, and temperature swings that range from 50 degrees below zero to 130 degrees above. The image changed to show various Earth creatures. These are some of the life forms humans evolved alongside. This is a grizzly bear, which weighs 800 pounds and can run 30 miles per hour. This is a great white shark, an apex predator that's remained essentially unchanged for 400 million years. And this, she paused as the image showed a tiny mosquito, carries diseases that kill more humans every year than all our wars combined. Admiral Zephyr's watery form rippled with shock. "How did your species survive in such conditions?" "By becoming smarter and more adaptable than anything trying to kill us," Chen answered. "We learned to work together, to plan ahead, to never give up, and to always protect our young. Those instincts are hardwired into every human." Meanwhile, in the Krex prisoner holding area, Colonel Martinez was conducting his own educational session. Warlord Thekmor, the captured Krex commander, sat behind energy barriers designed to contain the dangerous insectoid warrior. "I do not understand you humans," Thekmor said, his mandibles clicking with frustration. "We conquered 47 worlds before facing you. No species has ever shown mercy to captured Krex soldiers. Why do you feed us and treat our wounded?" Martinez sat down across from the alien, separated only by the energy field. "Because you're not our enemy anymore, Warlord. Your fleet is broken, your invasion is over, and now you're just someone who needs help." "But my soldiers killed your people," Thekmor protested. "We would have enslaved or destroyed every human we encountered. How can you forgive such things?" "We don't forgive them," Martinez replied calmly. "What you did was wrong and there will be consequences. But we don't believe in making people suffer unnecessarily. That's not justice, it's just cruelty." The Krex commander studied the human with his black compound eyes. "Your species confuses me. You fight with the fury of demons, but you show mercy like what?" Martinez asked. "Like the mythical protector gods my people told stories about before we became conquerors," Thekmor finished quietly. Back in the medical bay, Dr. Nix was wrapping up her interview with Sergeant O'Connor. "One final question, Sergeant. What do you think makes humans different from other species in the galaxy?" O'Connor thought for a moment, then pointed to a nearby medical station where a human doctor was carefully treating a young Krex soldier who couldn't have been much older than a child. "See that?" he said. 6 hours ago, that Krex kid was shooting at us. Now Dr. Kim is saving his life because he's wounded and scared and far from home. That's what makes us different, Doctor. We remember that everyone is someone's child. Even your enemies?" Dr. Nix asked. "Especially our enemies," O'Connor replied. "Because if we start thinking of other people as monsters, then we become the monsters." Dr. Nix finished her notes and prepared to leave. But O'Connor stopped her with one more comment. "Doctor, I want you to understand something about humans. We didn't become apex predators because we were the biggest or the strongest or the most vicious. We became apex predators because we were the best at learning from our mistakes and adapting to change. He gestured toward the ongoing rescue operations visible through the medical bay windows. The Krex made the mistake of thinking that strength only comes from the ability to destroy. We learned a long time ago that real strength comes from the ability to protect and heal and build. On the bridge of her observation ship, Admiral Zephyr was reviewing reports from his intelligence officers about human military capabilities. The numbers didn't make sense according to everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "human ships are individually weaker than equivalent Krex vessels. Their weapons have shorter range, their armor is thinner, and their ships are smaller. By every standard military calculation, they should have been destroyed in the first exchange of fire." "Then how did they win?" Zephyr asked. "Coordination, sir." "Every human ship in the fleet acted as if it were part of a single organism. They shared targeting data instantly, coordinated their movements to the second, and adapted their tactics in real time as the battle developed." Another officer spoke up. "Sir, we've also analyzed their approach to civilian evacuation. Human ships were pulling refugees off the planets even while the battle was still ongoing. They never stopped prioritizing civilian safety, even when it put their own forces at risk." Zephyr absorbed this information with growing amazement. "So they fight as one unit, but they also refuse to sacrifice innocent lives for tactical advantage?" "That's correct, sir. And there's something else. We intercepted communications between human commanders during the battle. Not once did any of them express anger or hatred toward the Krex. They spoke about their enemies with what can only be described as professional respect." Professional respect? Zephyr was confused. They were fighting for their lives and the lives of billions of civilians. "Yes, sir. But the humans seemed to view the battle as a job that needed to be done, not a personal conflict. They fought to win, but they didn't fight out of hatred or revenge. As the day turned to night, representatives from across the galaxy continued to study the humans with growing fascination and concern. These Deathworlders had shattered every assumption about how warfare worked, how military units operated, and how civilized species should behave toward their enemies. Dr. Nix sat in her quarters, reviewing her interview notes and trying to write a report that would help the Galactic Council understand what they were dealing with. But how could she explain a species that fought like legendary warriors but treated prisoners? The final battle began at dawn over Zelani Prime. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the heavy cruiser Indomitable, watching as the last of the Krex armada formed a defensive sphere around the planet. 3 million enemy ships hung in space like a metal storm cloud, their weapons trained on the approaching human fleet. "Tactical report," Chen ordered. "The Krex have positioned their heaviest ships in the inner ring around the planet," reported Commander Park. "They're using the civilian population as a shield. If we attack directly, millions of innocent people will die." Chen studied the holographic display floating above the bridge. The Krex formation was perfect by galactic standards. Any conventional attack would result in massive casualties among the Zelani refugees still trapped on the planet's surface. "Ma'am," came the voice of Captain Rodriguez over the communications channel. "The Krex commander is broadcasting a message to the fleet." "Put it through," Chen ordered. The image of Warlord Thekmor appeared on the main screen. The massive insectoid leader stood in the command center of his flagship, surrounded by his most elite warriors. "Human fleet," he said, his voice carrying the arrogance of someone who had never truly faced defeat. "You have won several small battles, but now you face the full might of the Krex Dominion. Surrender now, and we will grant you swift deaths. Continue this futile resistance, and we will make your entire species suffer for generations." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Shen looked around at her officers, seeing the same grim determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. "Signal the fleet," she said. "All ships prepare for Operation Guardian Angel." "Ma'am," Commander Park said quietly, "Guardian Angel has a 90% casualty projection. Most of our ships won't survive." "I know," Chen replied, "but most of the Zelani civilians will. Send the signal." Across the human fleet, 37 ships received their final orders. On each vessel, human crews made their peace with what was about to happen. They checked their equipment one last time, sent final messages to loved ones back on Earth, and prepared to do what humans had always done when faced with impossible odds, whatever it took to protect the innocent. Captain Rodriguez stood in the briefing room of his destroyer, addressing his crew for what he knew would be the last time. "Everyone listen up," he said. In about 10 minutes, we're going to charge directly into the largest fleet in galactic history. The math says we can't win. The odds say we're all going to die." He paused, looking at the faces of the men and women who had followed him through a dozen battles. "But we're not doing this to win a war. We're doing this to save lives. Every minute we keep those Krek ships focused on us is another minute for the evacuation shuttles to reach the surface and get civilians to safety." Sergeant O'Connor raised his hand. "Sir, what about our families? What do we tell them?" Rodriguez smiled, and for a moment the weight of command seemed to lift from his shoulders. "Tell them we did our job, Sergeant. Tell them we stood between the innocent and the monsters, and we never backed down." On the surface of Zelani Prime, Ambassador This Ka watched the sky through the broken dome of what had once been her government's headquarters. Human shuttles were landing continuously, loading refugees and taking off again under heavy fire from Krek's ground forces. "Ambassador," called Dr. Foster, who was coordinating the medical evacuation, "we need to get you on the next transport. It's not safe here." "I'm not leaving while my people are still in danger," Thiska replied. "I'll go on the last shuttle." Dr. Foster started to argue, then saw the determination in the Zelani diplomat's crystal eyes. "Then we'll go on the last shuttle together," she said. In space above them, the human fleet began its final approach. Admiral Chen had divided her ships into 3 groups. The first group, led by her own flagship, would attack the Krek's formation head-on, drawing the enemy's attention and firepower. The second group would circle around and strike at the command ships. The third group, consisting of the fastest vessels, would punch through the Krek's lines and engage their heavy weapons platforms. It was a desperate plan that required precise timing and enormous sacrifice. But it was also the only way to save the millions of civilians still trapped on the planet. "All ships," Chen broadcast to the fleet. "This is Admiral Chen. Today we fight not for glory or conquest, but for the idea that innocent people deserve protection. Today we show the galaxy what it means to be human. All ships execute Guardian Angel. Good hunting." The human fleet accelerated toward the Krek's armada like arrows shot from a bow. The first exchange of fire lit up space with energy beams and explosions. Human ships, smaller and more maneuverable than their enemies, darted between the massive Krek's vessels like fighter craft attacking giants. Captain Rodriguez brought his destroyer in close to a Krek's dreadnought, firing all weapons at point-blank range. His ship's armor was torn apart by return fire, but he held position long enough to cripple the enemy vessel's main weapons. "Sir," his tactical officer called out over the sound of alarms, "we've lost main power. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Keep firing," Rodriguez ordered. "All remaining power to weapons." On the other side of the battle, Commander Park's stealth ship Shadow emerged from behind a disabled Krek's cruiser and launched a spread of torpedoes at the enemy command vessel. The explosions sent the massive ship tumbling out of formation, its communication arrays destroyed. But for every victory, the humans paid a terrible price. Ship after ship was destroyed or crippled by overwhelming enemy fire. The Indomitable took a direct hit to her bridge, killing half of Admiral Chen's staff and leaving the flagship barely functional. "Ma'am," reported the surviving communications officer, blood running down his face, "we've lost contact with 12 ships. Estimated casualties at 60% and rising." Chen wiped blood from her own eyes and looked at the tactical display. The plan was working. The Krek's fleet was in chaos, their formations broken, their command structure disrupted, but the cost had been enormous. "Signal all remaining ships," she ordered. "Final phase. All ships converge on the planet. Cover the evacuation shuttles at all costs." On the surface, the last human shuttles were loading the final groups of refugees. Dr. Foster helped elderly Zelani civilians climb aboard, while Sergeant O'Connor and his squad held off, attacking Krek soldiers. "That's the last transport." O'Connor called out, "Everyone fall back to the landing zone." But as they retreated, O'Connor saw something that made him stop. A group of young Zelani children had become separated from their families and were trapped in a collapsed building. Krek soldiers were closing in on their position. "Sergeant," Dr. Foster called, "we have to go now." O'Connor looked at the shuttle, then at the trapped children. He made his choice. "Go," he shouted to his squad. "Get the doctor out of here." Before anyone could stop him, O'Connor charged toward the building where the children were hiding. His rifle fired continuously as he fought his way through the Krek soldiers, taking hit after hit but refusing to fall. He reached the children just as a Krex war form raised its weapon to kill them. O'Connor threw himself between the alien and the innocents, taking the blast that should have ended their lives. As he fell, O'Connor activated a grenade that brought down the rest of the building's ceiling, crushing the Krex soldiers but creating a safe pocket where the children could hide until other humans found them. In space, Captain Rodriguez made a similar choice. His destroyer was dying, its hull breached in a dozen places, but he could see that one last Krex command ship was still coordinating attacks on the evacuation shuttles. "All crew to escape pods," he ordered. "That's a direct order." "Sir," his pilot protested, "what about you?" Rodriguez smiled the same sad smile he had shown his crew in the briefing room. "Someone has to make sure this ship hits its target." "Get out of here, son. Tell my wife I love her." As his crew reluctantly abandoned ship, Rodriguez programmed the Hellhound's autopilot for a collision course with the Krex flagship. But instead of using the automated systems, he stayed at the controls himself, making small adjustments to ensure the impact would be perfect. "This is Captain Rodriguez to Admiral Chen," he broadcast on an open channel. "Tell my daughters their daddy was thinking about them. Hellhound out." The destroyer struck the Krex command ship at full speed, its reactor exploding in a ball of fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. The blast destroyed the enemy flagship and damaged 6 other vessels, finally breaking the last organized resistance. Admiral Chen, watching from her crippled bridge, felt tears streaming down her face. Rodriguez had been one of her best officers and a good friend. His sacrifice had saved thousands of lives, but the cost was almost too much to bear. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "the remaining Krex ships are requesting permission to surrender." Chen wiped her eyes and straightened her uniform. "Tell them to power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that harms civilians will be destroyed." The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. Human medical ships moved among the wreckage, rescuing survivors from both sides. Human engineers began the massive task of rebuilding damaged space stations and planetary infrastructure, and human diplomats started the delicate process of figuring out what to do with 3 million captured Krex soldiers.